What's up? Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your Saturday today, and that's so nice to be able to
Right. And while we're waiting to get a few more people in, let us know where you're joining from. If you have a podcast, what's the name of your podcast? If you're an aspiring podcaster, put that in the chat as well.
Yep. I see all the folks. Hey. I love it. Good. How we doing there, Nicole? What are you thinking?
We're 2 minutes in. Do you want me to start by doing your intro, or were you gonna kick off a spiel and then me intro you?
You can go ahead and do the intro, and then I'll take it. I'll take it from there.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for being on time. We are excited to bring this great conversation to you, speaking about shifting the paradigm of measurement, success, and impact in podcasting. And we have the amazing Elsie Escobar. And let me just tell you more about her. Elsie is a 15-year veteran in the podcasting industry. I'm going to just let y'all know, 15 years ago, I had no idea what a podcast was. Actually, 5 years ago, I didn't know what a podcast was, right? So super excited, to be here with a 15-year veteran. Elsie's also an inductee to the Academy of Podcasters Hall of Fame. Oh my goodness, kudos for that. She's the co-founder of She Podcasts. She's a podcast, which is a podcasting community for women and non-binary that has over 20,000 members with a corresponding podcast as well as a conference. She's a Libsyn community manager and co-host and producer of The Feed, the official Libsyn podcast. She's a podcasting advocate. She's a mentor for women podcaster leaders. And she is just super amazing. And she's all about driving social change. So I'm just excited to be here and sharing this stage with Elsie and to hear everything she has to teach us and join in the conversation as I can. Aww. And thank you all for attending.
Thank you so much. One of the first things that I just want to say is just thank you. I recognize what an honor it is to be getting a little bit of space here in this incredible conference from Afros in Audio. And the team has been an incredible team to work with, and to just be able to advocate the work that they're doing is truly just an astounding, just fantastic for me. I'm here because I'm speaking to my people here, meaning most of us, I believe, attending Afros in Audio are, for the most part, independent podcasters. We are starting from scratch. As Nicole said, 15 years I've been in this industry. I started from knowing absolutely nothing, zero. I barely even knew how to email. I thought AOL was the internet, and I'm not joking. To being able to do almost any different aspect within the podcasting space, both behind the scenes and in front of the camera or in front of the mic, and as it continues to change from all different aspects. So I am not here to speak to what I consider sometimes the upper echelon of the possible 10% of folks that are, they're having different conversations. I am here to continue to keep our voices podcasting by letting you know and really imparting in you the necessity of understanding the basics of how to keep podcasting, because we need every single one of your voices to keep going. So Nicole, thank you so much. Mind you, she has a session tomorrow at 3 p.m. that you must attend. She's going to expand a little bit on that when we talk here, but for the most part, her session is going to really break it down for you tomorrow at 3, which is all about data. So let's go ahead and get moving here. So currently, the number one way that most people measure their worth of their podcast, and unfortunately, at times personally, is download numbers. Downloads are often celebrated. It really is the top public expression of achievement, particularly that I've seen it not only on social media, on groups, everywhere. The first thing that you hear are people saying, I got X amount of downloads. And this is a constant conversation that you always see on social. It's that key metric that people get very proud of. But unfortunately, what I have seen working in the space is that it's also downloads are equally the primary source of shame and doubt. It is the number one reason that folks quit, rebrand, or they think that they're a failure, and often apologize, which is this constant thing that I hear a lot of the time when I ask people about their podcast. And then sometimes they'll undercut their own greatness by saying, but I only have, and they'll shrink themselves. This public apology just kills me. I developed this little presentation because when I was attending my own event, She Podcast Live, I heard so many of the folks that were attending in this shame place about their downloads. And it really upset me to be able to see that just one number was so representative of so much sadness that at least that I felt that was going out in the space. So I'd love for you to share, maybe in the comments right now, from your experience, anything that you were able to measure completely using one data point, just one data point, that one thing, right? And I'm just gonna call out some things here just in case. Like, let's say for your romantic relationships, your prowess as a relationship person, if somebody were to coin your ability to do that by how often you actually have sex, and you had to like put that out into the world, or your career was solely based on how much money you make annually, or your health, and it was only based on how much you weigh, and that's the only conversation people were having. Your finances, of course, how much money, how much have you put away for your retirement? Your schooling, how many years did you attend school? Your parenting, how old were your kids when they were able to read? You can even already see this, like even just by seeing these questions, that they are immediately triggering in some way, shape, or form. I know for me, sometimes there is shame in some way attached to some of these questions that society imparts on us. And I do feel that we are now bringing that into that whole download situation. We would never judge a person solely based on one of the answer to these questions. We all know that for us, in the way that we deal with our life, we naturally look at the way we engage with our lives and our endeavors from multiple points of view, multiple layers of experience that are all full of subtleties and opportunities to streamline our behavior and our choices, not only through our own current knowledge, but the quality of our commitment, but also the circumstances surrounding these goals. So why do we feel that when it comes to podcasting, our own individual circumstances don't count? And that we must measure all viability of our idea, voice, and vision from a completely disconnected data point, such as download numbers. Nicole, I know that you have all kinds of thoughts about goal setting and the importance of goals for your podcast. Can you share just a little bit of what you think about goals as a possible place to start when it comes to the data?
Right. So the one thing I like to remind myself around goals is the acronym that I heard many moons ago and may be familiar to some in the audience is the SMART acronym, right? And the word that I want to call out in relation to the SMART acronym in downloads is attainable. Right. So when you're starting a podcast as a new podcaster and you may not have a community already established, to set a goal of 1 million downloads is not really attainable, and it's not too realistic. Right. So going to those acronyms in relation to the SMART, in relation to setting SMART goals. Right. And then also, I like to think about it as far as like comparing yourself to yourself, right? Like, don't go out there comparing yourself to someone that's been podcasting for years, where you're starting on your day one and you're looking at their day 5,000 and wondering why your numbers don't look like theirs, right? Absolutely. And then another thing, like, because I suffer with this even myself, having a decent number of podcast downloads, but not a huge number, in relation to other people. I was talking to someone else and I'm like, yeah, I'm here, whatever. And she level set me real quick. She said, Nicole, not one single person on the earth has to listen to your podcast, right? So even having one download can be considered a success, right? And the one thing that I love about podcasting that I scream from the mountaintops is that it's on your terms. Like, you get to define what success looks like for you. And an example of that for me is like my first season, an entire 18 episodes. I set a goal for 1,000 downloads over my 18 episodes. And I actually attained 1,001 by the time it was over. Right now, in my mind, that was attainable. Did I know exactly where it was going to come from? No, I didn't. But I didn't go out there and say, I want 50,000 downloads and I have this very niche market, and I'm into this new territory.
Perfect. Yes. And, to your point about putting yourself up against what other folks are doing in the space, something that I really love to look at is what sometimes I'll call it mitigating circumstances, possibly not the best term to use here. And the reason that I start each one of these bullet points with a lack is not to bring any shame to this or anything like you're not enough to be able to achieve these things, but just to see all of the different types of skill sets that are really important and that actually can be a huge differentiator between one person getting X amount of downloads and the other person getting Y amount of downloads. So everything that you see here can have a significant impact on download numbers. Every one of those points can in fact go from the get-go, get pretty significant at creating roadblocks towards getting more downloads for yourself. So it's really an opportunity to recognize where we as producers need to focus. So even in looking at all of this stuff, think about the things that maybe at this time you don't have an abundance of here. Maybe there are some missing things. And also note that the skills that are not directly related with podcasting are actually quite a different benefit and resources for all of us. So there are maybe, for some of us, maybe better at tech. We can help each other get better at tech, or some people have more sales chops than other people. Then you help each other to be able to do that. We don't come into the space knowing all the things, and you would be very surprised how many aspects of this are really necessary to be a thriving producer in this industry that essentially you can create so much more of what you want from the start. So why is podcasting what I call the disconnected data point? And so here's some definitions. Number one, a download does not equal a person. A download does not equal a listener. A download does not equal a human that listened to your whole show. A download does not equal a subscriber to your show. By the way, in tomorrow's presentation with Nikita Burks-Hale, which we will be co-leading, it's at 12:30 tomorrow, we will briefly be chatting about downloads versus listeners versus subscribers and all of that naming stuff and all the jargon that you hear out there, as well as some very specific data about download numbers so that you can take that with you. But let's talk about what a download is. So a download is an actual engagement with your content. That's the active part of the person that's at the end. So that would be someone tapped to download your file. They pressed play on your player on your website. They played your episode from within a podcast app. They clicked on a link to your direct MP3 file. And that does not guarantee that they listened. It simply means that they engaged with the file in some way. A download also equals your media file was called to be delivered. And this is a passive thing that happens to the file. For those that have subscribed to your show, they automatically get your latest episode delivered to their service, however their device, however they're consuming it. Some apps can actually be set to automatically download episodes as they are released. So they're automatically going out into their phones without them doing anything with it. They may not even know that it's there. Some web apps automatically preload the file into the player when somebody gets onto a website. This is a practice that I completely think that is not okay, and not necessarily because it's a nefarious practice, but because it actually skews your download numbers whenever your podcast player is preloading the file. Anytime anybody goes on the website, they may or may not even know or see the player on the website. So it does not guarantee that anybody listened. So again, downloads do not guarantee audience. Downloads are essentially just a thing that we've decided is how we're going to be measuring this stuff. So a download really technically is 1 second of listening all the way up to the entire media file. It does not differentiate. So if somebody plays 1 second and then leaves, that's a download. Or if they listen the entire thing, that's also a download. So one listener can also, meaning a listener, a human being, could equal more than one download. So the stronger your content and the larger your back catalog, the more probability that one listener could equal the number of your past episodes. They could, because I have been known to binge listen to all the episodes from somebody before. So I'm using my podcast, She Podcast, as an example. So maybe there's somebody who listens to the latest episode and they're like, oh my gosh, this is the best podcast in the whole world. I must consume their entire back catalog. And in a lot of podcast apps, you really can tap one button and it downloads the entire back catalog. One person could actually end up equaling 336 downloads, because that's how many episodes we have for the show right now. So how do I know that my audience is still, that's one human, but I have now 336 downloads because of that person that did that? A download will be counted regardless of the quality of interaction with the media file. It can be someone clicking on your link by mistake. It can be someone listening to a few minutes and deciding they don't want to listen anymore. Someone who started to listen on your website and then decided to listen by downloading your episode in their favorite podcast app. Because I do this all the time. I'll start on the website and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a great show. And then I'll leave it, right? And then I will pick up my phone and I'll download it. That's 2, and it's just me. So that would be 2 downloads. That's just something else for you to kind of think about here. So Nicole, I know that you're a master of being able to not only guide folks into what to measure, but also positioning data that they do get to better reflect success and value. And I'm going to throw it to you in just a moment, okay? Just a moment. But we really must have a multi-layered, multifaceted approach to measuring growth and success, particularly in podcasting, and particularly with the type of shows that we are creating that sometimes aren't going to be calling all the people in the entire planet to come listen to our stuff. So downloads are a good metric to keep track of, but so is audience feedback. So are your connections and opportunities, access, skill building that you're doing. The way that podcasting has really rounded out my professional impact in not only how I show up to jobs, to opportunities, it has given me a vast understanding of a landscape that wasn't there before, because I've been in it. I had my hands dirty. The skill set is so huge. The sales, obviously, conversions of people buying things that you happen to be selling. To me, the happy is one of the most important ways for you to measure. You being happy about your podcast, for me, feels that it's an important thing to measure as well. Reach and influence, measuring when people take action because of you, when you can measure somebody, oh, I went and bought this one thing because you said it was that. And again, lastly, your intuition. I truly believe that we, especially as the masters of our content, we really know when we're on it, when there's something there, because we trust our own ability to discern. And yes, there are people who are sometimes going to give you a different answer or maybe guide you in better paths, but you also have to really trust your gut. We can't let that go. So Nicole, these are some thoughts that you brought to the table. And so I thought, why not you take over for this little bit of time and kind of share a little bit of what types of data you like to track or other ways that they can find said data to track beyond downloads.
Okay, thanks for adding this in. Look, I'm caught off guard, y'all. I'm gonna try my best. All right, a lot of this stuff you already mentioned though, right? But as I was listening to you, what I was thinking about to me, which is the most important, is really that impact, right? Like those messages that you receive from people that let you know that your podcast, your particular episode, what you said, like literally changed my life. You made me look at something totally different than I ever was going to look at it before, right? Your comedy podcast brought me out of depression, right? Like that kind of feedback is so important, right? And is far more valuable in my point of view than any number can ever be. Right? Like podcasts literally can save people's lives, right? So how do you put a number around that, right? So I think that understanding that is super important. And when you get those emails or those DMs, right, or people resharing your content, right, to understand that people find you valuable and find what you're doing valuable, stuff like that is priceless, right? Another thing I wanted to call out too is we're doing a service to the world, but we're also doing a service for ourselves, right? So podcasting also helps you to grow as an individual, to build your own confidence, right? To continue to learn things. I saw someone drop in the chat connections. Like I've networked and connected myself with so many people that I would not have before starting my podcast, right? So how do you put a number around that? So to me, those are some of the true indicators of success that have nothing to do with a download number.
Absolutely. And by the way, folks, again, Nicole will be presenting monitoring your podcast data tomorrow at 3. And she'll give you a lot more stuff. So if you are really interested in like tactical stuff, please attend. She's shared a little bit of her brain with me, and it's going to be awesome. So tomorrow at 3 p.m. So I'm going to leave you with 2 questions. And I'm going to give these to you and you must write this down. So if you want to take a screenshot, feel free to take a screenshot. It's the next slide. And I want you every single time that you start to look at some of these download numbers, or it starts to make you feel a little funky about measuring things, to ask yourself these questions quietly to yourself and kind of just sit with it. Okay? So if you don't retain anything from this presentation, please just take this screenshot and keep it with you. So question number 1, is something that cannot be measured worthless? And I say that because a lot of the pushback we often get, especially for industry folks, is that this metric is so nebulous in so many different ways, and there's really no way to understand your audience, and there's no way, and then continually that conversation, there's not enough, it's not the best, this all is totally sucky. Yes, totally. But is something that cannot be measured worthless? So just sit with that for yourself. You will make your own decision. And the second one is, when does being able to measure become a liability? And when is it your asset? And again, I need you to sit with that very clearly with yourself, because there's gonna come a point when numbers are going to make you feel disempowered. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to give that kind of power to something that's going to take it away from me. So when is it your liability and when is it your asset? And it's really up to you as a producer, particularly as an independent producer, somebody who's starting out, somebody who's been in the game for a while, to be able to discern when to step in and out. Well, thank you so much. I'll be here all weekend, everybody. We have about 5 minutes to do a little bit of Q&A. Also, please feel free to message me during the event. You're welcome to go into the Whova app and send me a DM if you want to. I'm in the Libsyn booth as well if you want to go check some of that stuff out. Be happy to connect with you. And you can actually use a code, the code AA Festival, for up to 2 months of free service on Libsyn, which we are a podcast hosting and distribution platform. And we have great stats. You can see your download numbers in them.
Yes, it is so awesome. I love the Libsyn 5 platform. I'll say something too, though, Elsie.
Yes,
you led into something that will be covered tomorrow at 3, another plug, right? Join me. But I figured out ways to manipulate data, right? We're not lying about the data, but ways to tell a more enticing story, even if your numbers aren't huge. So if you want to understand how you can make your numbers more interesting, you know, even if they aren't bigger, that conversation will be tomorrow at 3.
Absolutely. So if we have any questions, I am happy to answer some. Let's go ahead. And I know that I see a couple of questions in the Whova app right now. Let me see if I can quickly answer. What data is the most important in measuring the effectiveness of a podcast? But I think we talked a lot about that, and I can tell you one little bit of information that, or a quote that really struck me. It's by another podcaster, or I attribute it to him. I don't know if he came up with it all on his own, but it was brilliant. His name is Christopher S. Penn, old school podcaster. And I was watching him do a video once, and he said, data without a goal is a distraction. And when he said that, I was like, oh my God, you are
That's good. That
so
is so
it's
good.
like, and then it was like data, and I would add, or measurement without a goal is a distraction. So I would say, what data is most important in measuring the effectiveness of a podcast? You have to set what the goal is, right? It's going to be different if you're wanting to get 100,000 downloads per episode per month so that you can monetize using advertisers via the CPM model or programmatic, versus you are selling your course and you just need to get 5 seats sold for your first course of your podcast. Or maybe it's really just about empowering a specific community. Those are completely separate goals, and more doesn't necessarily mean better. So that was one. The other one that I got here, I think this one you should attend Nicole's session, is what top 3 organizational tips would you recommend? So I think, Nicole, you've got like some good ways to record, because that's one of the things. You have to record your stuff, right? You have to like track it. So 3 o'clock tomorrow, you can go there.
Right. And I'll briefly run into that. Like, I do a lot of downloading, right? So the Libsyn app allows you to download your stuff into a CSV file, which is a spreadsheet file for those that may not know. And then I convert that over to Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. And then I do a lot of playing around, you know, to see what story those numbers tell me, because numbers do tell stories.
Absolutely. So good. We have 1 more minute. I know I could swear that there were some other places in there. I think I saw somebody ask a question about podcast hosting stats, whether or not they should pay for a third party. Again, that really depends on the goal that you have. If you have a goal of monetizing the podcast via advertisers using the system that is in place for the podcasting industry, which is primarily a CPM model, which we will discuss with Nikita next tomorrow at 12:30 as well, and what that means, then it would behoove you maybe to invest in a third-party service. But usually podcast hosting sites have advanced data that you can rely on. There are many amazing hosts out there that have verified IAB stats that you can count on. So I do believe that we have come to an end. My sweet.
Thanks, guys. We
Nicole.
appreciate you.
Yes, thank you.